All right. Well, thank you for those songs. I kind of thought maybe you were going to sing "Happy Birthday" to yourself, but you made a much better choice. So, all right. Proverbs chapter 15. All right. So this is lesson number 10 in our study of Proverbs, entitled "Right Words." And so this is the third lesson I think that's been looking at our use of words in Proverbs. Um, Proverbs chapter 15. We'll start with verse number 7. The lips of the wise disperse knowledge, but the heart of the foolish doeth not so. So, the last time we looked at the wisdom of keeping our words few, restraining our speech, discerning that there is a time to be silent and a time to keep words at a great minimum. So there's a lot of references in Proverbs to our speech. We've talked about that over the past couple of weeks. And in Proverbs, our speech is one of the distinguishing marks between folly and wisdom. It's so prevalent in the book of Proverbs that it is one of the marks by which we see that. So if we think about one of the repeated marks of wisdom is restraining speech, and folly would be in an abundant and a careless sort of speech. So, a couple verses, Proverbs 15:2. The tongue of the wise useth knowledge aright, but the mouth of fools poureth out foolishness. And in verse 28 in chapter 15, the heart of the righteous studieth to answer, but the mouth of the wicked poureth out evil things. And so that picture that we're given, it almost puts you in mind of maybe just taking, a bucket full of water or something and just dumping it out. And that's is the way that the mouth of fools operate. They just pour forth, spew forth speech in an abundant way. Well, so we talked about keeping our words few, and there certainly are many good reasons for that. And certainly there is a time to be silent. But keeping silent or keeping words very minimal is only one of the ways that we use words rightly. And we also have to realize there is a time to speak. There is a time when we do need to use words. We do need to use them wisely and carefully. And obviously, wisdom is needed to discern between those times. Is this a time for minimal speech? Is this a time for silence? Is this a time for speaking? And what sort of speaking does this time require? So in this particular study, we do want to consider the right use of words and see how that involves the crafting of words. In other words, words that are well put, well ordered, as well as their timing. Okay, so we'll start with the right use of words. Proverbs 13, 14 will be our first reference here. We use words rightly when we use words to instruct or to speak wisdom. Proverbs 13:14. The law of the wise is a fountain of life to depart from the snares of death. Now, obviously, the law of the wise here would refer to their teaching, their instruction, their speech. And Proverbs 15:7. The lips of the wise disperse knowledge, but the heart of the foolish doeth not so. So we're told that wisdom, when wisdom speaks, wisdom is using knowledge aright. But this image of a fountain of life is one of wise words that are life giving. They are nourishing in a sense. They are healthy and wholesome words. They're words that do good to the people that they are spoken to. Of course, they may not always be received well, but that would be the intent. And so the lips of the wise are dispersing knowledge. They're spreading knowledge when they speak. Words are used rightly when they are used to correct. Now, we also have to realize that speaking correction oftentimes doesn't lead to a lot of popularity, and particularly in the moment. And maybe you've had the experience of being on either end of this, but there have been times that people have spoken correction to me, and I didn't receive it real well at the time. And over time, could see the wisdom and grew to be thankful for that, and grew in my love and appreciation of the person who who shared that with me. So we do use words rightly when we use them to correct. So Proverbs chapter 25 and verse number 12, as an earring of gold and an ornament of fine gold, so is a wise reprover upon an obedient ear. So the picture here, putting an earring or some other type of jewelry or some other type of decoration, what does that do? Well, it it beautifies, it enhances, it makes better in some way. And so that's the comparison, that when we speak a wise word of instruction or correction, and that word comes upon an obedient ear, it's like putting a nice earring upon that ear. It's beautifying, it's making better. Proverbs 27, there's a couple of verses here in verses 5 and 6. Open rebuke is better than secret love. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, but the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. And that's also something for us, to keep in mind. If someone is only ever flattering us, then that gives us sort of an idea of what type of a friend that is, and the value that there is in a friend that can deliver even faithful wounds when they are necessary. Proverbs 28:23. He that rebuketh a man afterwards shall find more favor than he that flattereth with the tongue. And this kind of goes along with what I was saying a little while ago, that sometimes it might take a while. Correction, sometimes a word of correction can cause some tension, can cause some, maybe even cause a little bit of conflict. But over time, a word of correction that's delivered to someone that grows in wisdom will lead to more favor than the person that flattered. It's quite a letdown to realize that maybe someone did not tell you the truth when they could have, and the concealing of that truth in some way has led to some sort of problem for you in a way. And so you don't, you would appreciate much more the truth being delivered in a loving and a wise way than it being concealed. Next, words are used rightly when words are used to speak to someone's needs. So these would be words that are designed to be a help, words that are designed um, to be a support, to minister, to give comfort in a time of grief, or whatever the case may be. So Proverbs chapter 12, verse 18. There is that speaketh like the piercings of a sword, but the tongue of the wise is health. And so there are words that can be used that cut. In other words, there are words that can be used that are like pouring salt in a wound. And there are words that can be used that are healing, words that are ministering health and, again, nourishing to someone, and giving them help in a time of need. Proverbs chapter 12, verse 25. Heaviness in the heart of man maketh it stoop, but a good word maketh it glad. And so we talked, and this is a couple weeks ago, about the power of words. And words do have a lot of power, and particularly wise words, words that are well formed and well put and timely. have a lot of power to actually make glad the heart of someone experiencing heaviness. And so that could be some sort of a grief. It could be the sorrow of a loss. It could be the sorrow of maybe a particularly heavy struggle, whatever that may be. And sometimes we also have to recognize that um, someone may be struggling with something, and to us it might seem like no big deal, but a person's problems are their problems, and whatever stage of life or state of the journey that they are in, they may be really having a difficulty. And so it takes wisdom to know how to speak words that are helpful, that are encouraging and making glad, instead of making someone's burden heavier and more grievous, but rather lightening it in some way. Proverbs 15:14, a wholesome tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness therein is a breach in the spirit. So oftentimes we've talked about how in Proverbs, that a lot of Proverbs, these sayings are presented in a contrast. And so you have an antithesis. You've got the positive and the negative. And so just as it is that words have power, and words can make a heart glad, but words can also make the heart even more sorrowful. Words can also cause the heaviness to be worse. Perverseness, putting a breach in the spirit. And um, perverse, oftentimes with the word perverse, the English word that is, we think of a very negative connotation. Ultimately, in the word as it's used in Proverbs, and the word in the Hebrew, it has the idea of being away. So it's speaking the words that are sort of bent away from wisdom, speaking unwise words, you could say. Proverbs 16:24, pleasant words are as a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and health to the bones. And just think about food and drink, and that how they can have a real positive effect on your mood, on your outlook, on your state of mind. I mean, sometimes if we are extremely thirsty, extremely hungry, whatever the case may be, we can even get to the point where we're not even thinking clearly, or thinking rationally, and we can be refreshed, and we can be restored, or even sitting down to a meal, like maybe a Thanksgiving meal or whatever that it may be, with your family, and just how enjoyable that can be, and how good that it can be, an experience. And that's what the saying tells us here, that's pleasant words are like that. The words that we speak, when we use those words rightly, we can actually speak to someone's needs. We can actually help lighten their load, whatever the burden is that they are carrying. We can actually gladden their heart, and so on. All right. So next, words are also used rightly when they are used to speak to someone's defense. And in this sense, when you look through the book of Proverbs, there's a lot in it that has to do with justice or righteousness. In other words, right right dealing with others. And so even some of the Proverbs would speak of essentially being advocates for those that can't advocate for themselves. So Proverbs chapter 14, verse 25, a true witness delivereth souls, but a deceitful witness speaketh lies. So speaking honestly and speaking in defense of someone that maybe they've been falsely accused of something, or maybe they're suffering unjustly in some way for something. A true witness delivers souls, we're told. Proverbs 24:11. If thou forbear to deliver them that are drawn unto death, and those that are ready to be slain. Looks like I cut off part of that. Let me look at that. And then go on in verse 12. If thou sayest, behold, we knew it not, doth not he that pondereth the heart consider it? And he that keepeth thy soul, doth he not know it? And shall not he render to every man according to his works? So these verses, in some ways, remind us of some of the statements we have in the New Testament about doing good to others when it's in our power to do so. And here it has to do with the use of our words, speaking up on behalf of someone that maybe is suffering unjustly through oppression or whatever that the case may be. And if we are refusing to do that, it's saying we will be held accountable as well. Um, Going on in that sort of that same vein, Proverbs 31, verse number 8: "Open thy mouth for the dumb in the cause of all such as are appointed to destruction." Verse 9 says, "Open thy mouth, judge righteously, and plead the cause of the poor and needy." Now we know that some of the proverbs are particularly geared toward kingship and instructions and wise sayings, to one that would bear rule, that would have some sort of authority, or whatever that the case may be. Next, words are used rightly when the words spoken are honest and trustworthy words. So Proverbs 16:13: "Righteous lips are the delight of kings, and they love him that speaketh right." Now, this has to do with being like a faithful counselor to a king, and the value that oftentimes people in positions of power and authority that they do put on someone that is going to speak honest and trustworthy words to them. Proverbs 24:24: "He that saith unto the wicked, Thou art righteous, him shall the people curse, nations shall abhor him. But to them that rebuke him shall be delight, and a good blessing shall come upon them. Every man shall kiss his lips that giveth a right answer." And so we have, again, some of the proverbs that would speak to the idea of government and community and justice and oppressions and that sort of thing. Verse 27, verse 5: "Open rebuke is better than secret love." Proverbs 28:23: "He that rebuketh a man afterward shall find more favor than he that flattereth with his tongue." So again, words are used rightly when those words are honest words, when those words are trustworthy words, and really there's all kinds of applications that can be made of some of these sayings we've just looked at. So you could think about it in terms of business, for instance, and say your employer. And so, in a sense, speaking honestly and speaking in a trustworthy way, that you are looking out for the interests of that employer. You're looking out for the interests of that company. Sometimes people are employed by the government, and they have jobs in the government in different positions, and so they speaking honestly, speaking in a trustworthy way, and sometimes that can even be somewhat challenging because you may be in a position where maybe someone whose politics you don't agree with are over you, but you're doing a job, and doing that job right and well, and you're not trying to undermine that person just because maybe you don't agree with all of their policies or politics or whatever the case may be. Like sometimes when you work government jobs, your boss in a sense is maybe someone that's elected, or maybe it's someone that gets appointed by those that have been elected. And so I'm just kind of talking about some of the various applications that some of these verses could have. Next, right words, or words are used rightly when they are calming words, not words that are trying to incite or trying to instigate. Calming words. Proverbs 17:27: "He that hath knowledge spareth his words, and a man of understanding is of an excellent spirit." Proverbs 15:1: "A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger." Proverbs 25:15: "By long forbearing is a prince persuaded, and a soft tongue breaketh the bone." So there are certainly times when maybe hard words have to be spoken, but being of an excellent spirit, being of calming words, not trying to, and we might say words that are not trying to manipulate, words that are not trying to incite, words that are not trying to stir up, but words that are leading to more calm, level-headedness, rational thought, cool temperedness, and so on. So those are a number of ways that words are used rightly. And so we also want to talk about using words rightly also involves that right timing. That words have to be um, crafted to be put in a certain way, but also used at the right time in that right way. So, right timing. So, right or well put words are rightly timed words. Proverbs 15:23. A man hath joy by the answer of his mouth, and a word spoken in due season, how good is it? Proverbs 25:11, a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in pictures of silver. And maybe you have known someone or that it seemed like they always knew the right thing to say. They always seemed to know the right thing to say at the right time. And sometimes maybe uh, a little bit of humor is helpful, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not what you want, and so on. So there is a timing aspect to the right use of words, as well as again discerning that it's time to speak, but also what type of speech is needed in that time. So well put and well timed words. Wisdom understands that these are more easily received. These kind of words. Proverbs 16:21. The wise in heart shall be called prudent, and the sweetness of the lips increaseth learning. Proverbs 16:23. The heart of the wise teacheth his mouth, and addeth learning to his lips. Proverbs 22:11. He that loveth pureness of heart, for the grace of his lips, the king shall be his friend. Now, obviously, this is not about being slick or oily or anything like that with our speech. Obviously, right words have to be wise words. They have to be honest words. They have to be trustworthy words. But they also should be words that are well designed for that occasion, whatever that it may be, well put and well timed, and realizing that those words are easily received. In other words, there's a time sometimes to speak about something to someone. There's a time that it maybe is not the best time to try to speak to them about whatever that is. So, well put words that are delivered at the right time can certainly help to diffuse anger, to de-escalate the tension of a situation. So, Proverbs 15:1. A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. Proverbs 15:2. The tongue of the wise useth knowledge aright, but the mouth of fools poureth out foolishness. Proverbs 17:27. He that hath knowledge spareth his words, and a man of understanding is of excellent spirit. And Proverbs 25:15. By long forbearing is a prince persuaded, and a soft tongue breaketh the bone. And again, some of these we are repeating, but they certainly apply. Well put words are also going to be those truthful, reliable words. Proverbs 16:13. Righteous lips are the delight of kings, and they love him that speaketh right. Well put words also are studied words. They're studied answers. They are thoughtful words. In other words, when the picture of fools that we receive would be those that they just delight in just expressing their mind. So it's just, whatever thought pops into their head, whatever reaction. And sometimes we know as we go through life, we learn by experience that sometimes we can sort of react emotionally to something, and that's not necessarily the best and the wisest thing to speak, that just to vent that emotional reaction. So Proverbs 15:28 says, "The heart of the righteous studieth to answer, but the mouth of the wicked poureth out evil things." Proverbs 16:1, "The preparations of the heart in man, and the answer of the tongue is from the Lord." A lot of things could be said there about Proverbs 16, but nevertheless, words that are wise words, that are well put words, that are well timed words are going to be thoughtful words. They're going to be studied words. And we talked about, I think it was last time, about one of the reasons why we restrain our speech is so that we can give a thoughtful answer, so that we can give a considerate answer and a careful answer to a situation. All right, so just to sort of wrap this all up, bring this all together, um, I used to have a job at a call center doing phone surveys. All right, words fail me to describe how much that I hated that job. But as bad as you hate for guys like me to call you and interrupt you at home to conduct a phone survey, and I assure you, just as badly, I hated doing it. But nevertheless, that was one of the jobs I had many, many, many years ago. So um, I would call you up on the phone while you're at home trying to do whatever you're doing, and would do this phone survey and ask you about your telephone service and ask you a series of questions and try to get you to respond whether or not your expectations were met, not met, or exceeded in the phone service that you experienced. All right, so the call center that I worked for was a contractor essentially for major telephone companies, particularly in the Northeast. I probably didn't call any of you. These most of these were, I think, Pennsylvania and New Jersey and such. Anyway, um, but the call center was hired to conduct scientific surveys, and what that meant was that every person that was called needed to have the exact same survey experience as much as possible to make these results reliable. And so what that means is that we had a script to follow. And so we had to train on this for a while, that we're going to make these calls, and when the people answer, we're going to go through this particular script, this survey, to get their responses. Then we'd record those in the computer and go on to the next call. Some people would cooperate very well. Some people didn't. And when someone would go off script, so to speak, we had this little handy flip chart of what were called pat responses or pattern responses in order to get them back on topic. So if they go off script, we have to flip through, and based on whatever it was that they said, we would have to sort of flip through this chart to figure out the response that most closely addressed the question or the issue or the statement that they made. So this chart, gives us a number of scenarios and example type of statements or questions that the person might ask. So they're getting off the script of the survey, and so we're supposed to give them these predetermined responses to that. And that worked a lot of the time to get people back on track. But when it didn't, we would have to just refer them to the supervisor and then go on to the next call, because that was just a part of the parameters of the surveys that we were doing. Well, all of that is basically to say that though it might seem like it, speaking wisely is nothing like that. All right, so we can't take Proverbs and just reduce it to sort of a flip chart and say, well, speaking the right words at the right time, we just have to flip through, match the scenario, and then we can read the response. It does not work like that. So to speak wise words, We have to possess wisdom. There is no flip chart that we can use to speak right words. So Proverbs 4:23, keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Now the heart comes up a lot in the book of Proverbs and much of the Old Testament, like in the Psalms and so on. And generally speaking, when we see heart, especially in the Old Testament, we can think of mind, our mind. It has to do. It does have. I mean, it does involve feelings. It can, but most of the time, it has to do with our thoughts and our decisions and our wills and that sort of thing. Proverbs 10:20, the tongue of the just is as choice silver, the heart of the wicked is little worth. Proverbs 12:17, he that speaketh truth showeth forth righteousness, but a false witness deceit. Proverbs 14:5, a faithful witness will not lie, but a false witness will utter lies. In other words, Jesus said that out of the heart proceeds the evil thoughts and the all of those kind of things, and that as a man thinks in his heart, so he is. And out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks, and all those kind of things that we can read about in the New Testament. Well, that's exactly what Proverbs is going to tell us as well. So, right words, wise words, come from a wise heart. So again, it's not like we can just go through Proverbs, make a flip chart like when I was conducting phone surveys and just sort of refer, okay, this is the scenario, so this is what I say. No, it doesn't work that way at all. We have to have wisdom. We have to acquire wisdom. We have to grow in wisdom if we are going to use speech wisely, if we're going to use words correctly and use words in ways that are wise. We have to have wisdom because we have to have wisdom to discern when it's a time to speak, when it's a time to keep silent. We have to have wisdom to discern when a soft answer is what is needed. We have to have wisdom to discern when a word of instruction or a word of warning or a word of correction is what is needed. We have to have wisdom to discern when perhaps someone is overwhelmed, or they're overloaded, or they're laboring under a heavy burden, and we need to use words to help make them glad. Sometimes we simply need to cheer people up, so to speak, and we just have to have wisdom to be able to determine all of those things. Just like Proverbs tells us, answer a fool according to his folly. Answer not a fool according to his folly. And we have to have wisdom to discern which is which. When is the time to answer according to the folly? When is the time not to answer according to the folly, and so on. So, all right, that's all of our study for tonight. Any questions on anything that we've talked about? All right, well, if not, then we will have a word of prayer and be dismissed. Almighty Father in heaven, Lord, thank you so much for the day that you've given us, and thank you for your word. And I pray that you just would help us, that we would truly seek after wisdom, that we might grow in wisdom, that we might know and understand better how to manage our own lives and to walk in the way after you. Father, that we might more and more grow in our think your thoughts after you, to love the things that you love and to hate the things that you hate. Father, that we would use words in a way that would be speaking truth and love and wisdom. Father, that would be building people up, that would be speaking words of warning and correction where it is needed, and that we would be wise to receive those ourselves. Father, I pray that you would help us as we go to our homes tonight and throughout the rest of this week, that you just would keep us in your hands, Father. And we pray all these things tonight in the holy and precious name of Jesus Christ. And amen.